The email arrived on a Tuesday morning. It was the official company-wide announcement about Project Chimera, the new initiative that was supposed to revolutionize our division. The memo praised the strategic vision and leadership of my direct manager, David. My name wasn't mentioned. Not once. The idea, the months of research, the prototype I'd built on weekends, it was all his now. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a calculated takeover. And in that moment, my career path split in two. I could either accept the betrayal and fade into the background, or I could start treating my job like a chess game, where the king had just revealed himself as the opponent. I chose to play. The concept for what would become Project Chimera started in the data. I noticed a pattern our competitors had missed, a way to streamline a core process that would save millions and open up a new market. For 3 months I worked on it quietly, building the business case, running projections, creating a bare-bones prototype. I knew I needed an ally to get it in front of the right people, so I brought it to David. I framed it carefully. David, I've been analyzing our Q3 bottlenecks, and I think I found a potential solution. I'd value your guidance on how to position it. This is the first rule of corporate maneuvering. You have to make your boss feel like a co-conspirator, not a target. He saw the potential immediately. His eyes lit up. This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need, he said. Let's workshop this together. I can get us a slot at the next leadership offsite. The workshopping began. He'd suggest minor tweaks, ask for more data, and slowly, his language started to shift. Our concept became the direction I'm thinking. He started scheduling meetings with senior stakeholders without me, explaining that he was laying the groundwork. The warning signs were there, but the momentum was intoxicating. The pitch day arrived. I presented the core of the work, but David framed the narrative. He spoke about the strategic imperative and the long-term vision. The room was electric. The division head called it game-changing. Success was guaranteed. The betrayal wasn't a dramatic scene. It was quiet, administrative. A week after the pitch, I was copied on an email chain about Project Chimera's kickoff. My name wasn't on the distribution list for the core team. When I asked David about it, he was dismissive. We're keeping the core team lean for now, he said. Your contributions are noted, but we need to move fast. I'll need you to handle the background analytics. Then came the project charter document. Under originator, it listed only David's name. My role was defined as supporting analyst. That was the moment the shift happened. The frustration was instant, but the lesson was clear. In this environment, ownership isn't given, it's taken. And it can be stolen just as easily. The official announcement, the one that landed in my inbox that Tuesday, was just the public confirmation of the new reality. David was the visionary. I was part of the supporting cast. When I tried to raise the issue with him privately, the corporate gaslighting began. I think you're misremembering our initial conversations, he said, his tone patronizing. This was always a collaborative effort under my strategic oversight. You provided excellent data, which we appreciated. The we was particularly sharp. He had already absorbed the idea into his own identity. Arguing was pointless. It would just paint me as difficult, someone unable to be a team player. So I stopped arguing. This is the critical pivot from offense to defense. The goal was no longer to reclaim the idea that ship had sailed. The new goal was to ensure David's victory was temporary and his failure would be permanent. I became the most dedicated supporting analyst imaginable. I attended every meeting, took meticulous notes, and fulfilled every data request. But I was no longer building our project. I was building a case. I started a separate, password-protected log. Every decision David made, every piece of advice I offered that he ignored, every potential risk I flagged that he dismissed, it all went into the log with timestamps and supporting emails. This isn't paranoia, it's professional due diligence. I was documenting the creation of a time bomb. I knew Project Chimera had a critical flaw in its operational logic, a dependency David had glossed over in his high-level pitch. By cutting me out of the core team, he had cut himself off from the person who understood that flaw intimately. Simultaneously, I began a quiet campaign of alliance building. I scheduled casual coffees with key players in adjacent departments: legal, compliance, finance. I wasn't complaining about David. That would have been career suicide. Instead, I positioned myself as a deeply knowledgeable resource on the project, asking smart questions about how it intersected with their domains. From an implementation standpoint, have we considered the liability around data handoff between Phase 1 and 2? I was building a network of respected individuals who saw me as the project's quiet expert, while David played the visible frontman. I was patient. I knew his leadership style, overconfident, prone to cutting corners, would eventually create an opening. I just had to be ready when the foundation cracked. For 6 months, Project Chimera was the company's golden child. David's star rose accordingly. He secured a larger budget, a bigger team, and regular face time with the C-suite. He was the epitome of a leader on the fast track. From the outside, my strategy of quiet documentation might have looked like inaction. But I was watching the clock. The project's initial phase was all front-end development and marketing. The flashy parts David understood. The critical flaw, the one I had identified months earlier, was buried in the transition to the operational phase. It was a complex data integration issue that would become apparent only when they tried to go live. The first sign of trouble was a delayed milestone. The team missed its soft launch date. The official reason was unforeseen technical complexities. I knew the real reason. They had hit the dependency wall. David, desperate to maintain his image, started applying pressure. He demanded his team work weekends. He began bypassing established testing protocols to accelerate timelines. This is where my meticulous documentation became a strategic asset. I had emails from months prior where I had explicitly outlined this exact risk and suggested a mitigation plan. David's response at the time had been to dismiss it as over-engineering a solution for a problem that may not exist. The project didn't just stall, it began to hemorrhage money. The unforeseen complexities required expensive external consultants. Morale on the team plummeted under the pressure and the impossible deadlines. The whispers started. The allies I had cultivated in finance and legal began asking pointed questions in their own leadership meetings. The cracks in David's foundation were widening into chasms. My moment came during a panicked all-hands meeting David called to rally the troops. He stood before the exhausted team and presented a new, even more aggressive timeline, blaming the delays on a lack of innovative thinking from the technical staff. It was a desperate move, shifting blame downward. After the meeting, one of the senior engineers, a respected veteran, pulled me aside. "He's driving this thing off a cliff," he said quietly, "and he's taking us with him. You were the only one who saw this coming, weren't you?" That was my signal. The internal alliance was solidified. I didn't go to HR. HR exists to protect the company from liability, not to adjudicate idea theft. I went straight to the division head, the same one who had called the original pitch game-changing. I requested a private meeting, framing it as a, quote, critical risk assessment of Project Chimera. I walked into that room with a single, concise document. It wasn't an accusation, it was a timeline. It started with my initial proposal email to David, included every warning I had documented, showed his decisions to ignore them, and culminated in the current financial and operational disaster. I presented it not as a personal grievance, but as a case study in flawed leadership. I showed how David's refusal to acknowledge the project's operational realities I had identified, had created the crisis. I concluded with a single sentence. The project can be saved, but it requires a change in leadership and a return to the original, sound operational plan. I was no longer the victim, I was the solution. The investigation was swift and quiet. Senior leadership interviewed key team members, including the senior engineer who had approached me. They reviewed the project's financials. The evidence was undeniable. David wasn't fired for stealing an idea. That's a messy, subjective accusation. He was terminated for gross mismanagement of a strategic initiative resulting in significant financial loss. The official language was clean, corporate, and utterly devastating. His departure was announced on a Friday afternoon. There was no fanfare, just a terse email about a, quote, leadership transition. On Monday morning, the division head called me into his office. The power vacuum was palpable. He didn't offer apologies or acknowledge the theft. That story remained the quiet, understood subtext. He got straight to the point. Project Chimera is a disaster, but the core idea is still viable. You seem to be the only person who understands what went wrong and how to fix it. The team is demoralized and directionless. I need you to take over. Effective immediately. The offer was for David's job. I accepted. My first act in the new role wasn't a victory lap. It was a triage session. I called the team together, and my message was simple. The past 6 months are over. We are not here to assign blame for what went wrong. We are here to execute the project correctly, starting with fixing the operational flaw we all know exists. I immediately restructured the team, empowering the technical experts David had sidelined. We went back to the original plan I had drafted a year prior. The unspoken lesson resonated through the entire division. Everyone knew the real story. They saw that blind ambition, when coupled with incompetence, has a predictable expiration date. They saw that quiet, strategic competence, even when betrayed, can have immense staying power. It was a lesson in corporate justice that didn't need a memo. The outcome itself was the message. The real victory wasn't the title, it was demonstrating that integrity, when paired with strategy, is a formidable defense. Subscribe to Corporate Consequence for more navigations of the unspoken rules.